one being representing a man for Uptown TV. You understand?
Yasama batachinoy, besama yemet nor, semi kades mangustimta, fegadi besama indionech, endi hu bemedir tihun, yala tenterachnen siten zare, bedelachnem ikker belen, igna yebedelnen ikkeren demenil, awada fet na matagban, kakifu adenenen fi, mengus tiante antenantena, highly a maskan, lislealem.
In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architectural and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa, asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans who spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankango and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early were the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in those forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, whose spirit and sacrifice. We asked these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We asked these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We asked these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked those Africans who went with Boukman Dessalines to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us start our class with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Larry Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, great Gurus, receive our love, receive our desire to love you more, to attune our hearts and minds with your great breath.
Hawa, chief official of the high priestess of Amen-Ra, says, I am a noble for whom one should act, one of firm heart to the end of life, one truly venerated and had no fault. Give bread to the hungry and clothes to the naked. I put an end to pain and erased wrongdoing. I buried the blessed, supported the aged, and satisfied the needs of the have-nots. A shelter for the child and help to the widow, one who gave rank even to an infant. Did these things knowing their value and knowing their reward from the Lord of Ma'at, in a word, to endure in the mouth of the people without end, to be well remembered for years and years to come. From the Hosea, the book of declarations of virtues, out of the mouth of Hawa, chief official of the high priestess of Amen-Ra. Ancestors, the ones who came before and are still here, I acknowledge my ancestors upon whose shoulders I stand. Beautiful, beautiful Sunday morning on the island. We are enjoying it already. Nice little shower of rain this morning on this part of the northern and the northeastern part of Jamaica. Scattered showers, and it's kind of a little bit overcast. Take it easy on the roads if you're in this spot. I'm not quite sure what it is like in your neck of the woods, but in the eastern, northeastern, and northern parts, the roads will be a little bit slick, a little bit slippery. So take it easy on the roads as you move through this morning. We've got lots to get through, and I'm going to be going through it. Just what we're looking at this morning shortly. Told us they were going to be doing it, and they're doing it. Remember, nothing is hidden. It was all done in plain sight, openly, and in front of us all. With if you recall, the head of the monarchy in the UK was the one who was a guest speaker at that event a few years ago when they announced the reset. And here we are. It's full speed ahead. Look around you. Look around you. Pay attention. Pay attention. Sure that you're not one of those falling for the plot. Find ourselves in a classic divide and rule. Wherever we turn, this is manipulating all kinds of events to justify fascist laws, generate widespread fear and anger, and to of us, whichever side we plant ourselves on, so focused on fighting each other that we don't see the strings attached, both held by the same hand, both sides being played by the hidden hand, as the puppet masters and the puppet governments direct this global reset. They have been coldly calculating this for decades. And here we are, ready to fall into their plot and to fall into their trap. Be careful that you do not fall into their plot. It's a bigger plot. It's a massive trap. Oh, it's going to be difficult to escape, especially if you have already bought into their lies. The predictive programming that we talked about and then talked about again and are still talking about, playing out in front of our eyes, and here we are in a dystopic existence, wondering what's the end of it, and depending on them to take us out of it. But this was a plan all along. It's a global reset. These puppet governments have all bought into it. They themselves are being controlled, and their puppet masters are behind the scenes, and it's not who you think they are. But here so look at the dystopia. I know. No matter your color right now, it really doesn't. White or brown or black. They have identified the human trash and have found a way already to enslave again. And all colors and all creeds and all classes are in the slave class already, and here we are. My own thinking on this is that once we become aware of what's happening, is that we have a responsibility to ourselves to protect ourselves, our communities. It is what it is, and we deal with the isness of things. Nobody's coming to help us. They're not going to help us. The elections are not going to help us. Doesn't matter how many elections they have. It doesn't matter which side you think you're voting for. It is what it is. It is what it is. The U.S. election that we are all glued into, so many Jamaicans became part of the DNC convention, and before that the RNC convention, and we think we have a horse in this race because we hear about Brownstown from time to time. But we do not have a horse in this race. American foreign policy, as far as it concerns the developing countries, and as far as it concerns Jamaica, Haiti, the Caribbean, CARICOM, American foreign policy doesn't change towards us with the change of government. So it doesn't matter if it's the Republicans or the Democrats. Our experience have taught us that America's foreign policy toward us remains the same. Doesn't matter. We do not have a horse in this race. So stop it already. One party sign off on the sale of our land and our beaches and our rivers and our trees, and the other comes in, strengthen that contract and implements it. What does that tell us? What are we to glean from this, and how many times do they have to do this for us to recognize that Jamaica, PNP or JLP, is a two-headed monster and the same coin, different sides, but a two-headed monster. One brain, two heads. So how many times do we have to experience the PNP going into Europe or China or Asia and sign our livelihoods and our future and our children's future away, only for us to vote them out and vote in the JLP, who comes in and strengthen that contract and implements the very same thing that the PNP signed off on. How much more time, how many more times do they have to do this for us to recognize that we are in this together, but that the responsibility to see the change that we are dreaming of rests with us, we the people. So here we are as we get closer and closer to the plan that they have for us. So everything that they told us during COVID, everything that we looked at going into COVID, everything that was discussed at the World Economic Forum, everything that was discussed at the G8 and the G7s, was discussed at COP, because COP is also another cop-out. That's 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, or even 30. Doesn't matter. It's not in our interest. No way, no how, no sir. Here we are. They told us. And we're seeing it unfolding. We did in this space, and we're not going to work, and we're not going to be dealing with that today. But if you recall, and I suppose we can revisit, many of the programs that we did during the COVID lockdown, every single one of the programs for those 2 years during that lockdown, every single program that I did, every single program was entitled The Global Reset with a subtitle. The reason why we were able to talk about the global reset is because they told us that this is what they were doing. We just weren't paying attention. And let them do their reset. Let them reset. But where are we in the whole thing? Because their global reset includes a slave class, an enslaved class, whether it is enslaved by AI to AI or to them. And who is that enslaved class? And our own leaders tell us that we are a service class. We're a service industry. What does that mean? Who are we meant to serve? Doing what? Doing what? We've got some decisions to make to protect to protect ourselves, our families, our communities. We've got some decisions to make. And in the same way that Rastafari became and is and came out of that need to respond to oppression and enslavement and colonialism and neocolonialism, that we need a movement, a people, a thinking, an ideology. At this time, at this moment, right now, to respond to the new oppression, the settler colonialism, the dystopia, the artificial intelligence in terms of the controls, the global reset, the neoliberalism, and the death of our people, our communities, our nation. Whatever that ideology, that thinking is, it is already palpable, tangible, and the moment is now for the coming together of those who think alike, who understand the time that we're living in, who understand the urgency of now, as we take stock of the global reset and the dystopic environment of the dystopia in which we find ourselves. We're living the predictive programming. On this August 25 morning, if we recall nothing else and if we think of nothing else, let us think about our survival, the survival of our children, and the protection of our children's future. We have already lost so much to them, whoever they are, the puppet masters, to which our leaders owe their allegiance. Let me take a break. Community medical consideration for back to school, scope and impact. Back to school medical for short. In other words, so many of us are affected physically, psychologically, and in so many other ways when it comes to this time of year. And we want to go through this with our very special guest, Dr. Arthur Green. Come around about 7 o'clock, he's going to be joining me in the studio. Dr. Green is a medical doctor. He's also a naturopath. Joining me in the studio this morning as we talk about some of those issues that confront us, others, allies, and friends. We see, for example, the owner of Telegram. So many persons, who are radical and activists and those who are seeking for change, so many persons have moved away from the usual suspects, the usual social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook and so on, because there is more freedom, but there's also more privacy and less censorship in a space like Telegram. And so many times you're talking to especially persons who are dealing with issues regarding the big pharmaceutical mafia, the pharmaceutical companies, which is, what we call the pharmaceutical mafia. Big pharma, where they're dealing with issues regarding vaccines and big pharma, that they can do this and have their research published in a space like Telegram, their videos and so on in a space like Telegram. But so many other conversations regarding liberation that's not owned by the Zionist lobby. That in so many of these spaces, you can't say the things that you can say in Telegram. And so people say to you, well, I need to send you something, but I can't send you here. Are you on Telegram? And you say, yes, I'm Telegram. So, okay, go and I'll send you there. And you go there and you see the massive body of work, the research. So this has been going on for a while. I've always been aware that if I know about this, then they know about this. And if I am participating here, then they are monitoring me. I'm always aware of that because no space is safe. So I haven't gone out of my way to use their spaces in a serious way. But I know that a lot of people have been doing this to get their messages out, to get their research out, to get their information out. And yesterday, we're talking about how they all work together. Because right now, we talk about what's happening in the UK, what's happening in the world in terms of the fascist laws that we see being generated on the backside of the violence coming out of the United Kingdom. But this is happening across the world. The fear that they're driving into people regarding immigration and so on. It's all working together. And so today we're reading, and let me see if I can find that story, that the owner of Telegram, what's his name again? So he stepped off a plane. Pavel Durov, I think is his name. Right, so let me see if I can find this because it's everywhere. So this is the first story that's coming up is a Telegram. Okay, yeah. Telegram chief Pavel Durov to appear in court after French arrest. Telegram chief executive Pavel Durov is to appear in court today after being arrested at a Paris airport for offenses related to his popular messaging app, sources told the AFP. So it's the AFP that I'm reading here. Russia has accused France of refusing to cooperate following the arrest of the Franco-Russian billionaire, 39 years old, at Le Bourget airport on Saturday night. That's last night. Durov had arrived from Baku, Azerbaijan, and as soon as he stepped off the plane, he was arrested. Franz Hoffman, an office tasked with preventing violence against minors, had issued an arrest warrant for Durov in preliminary investigation into alleged offenses, including fraud, drug trafficking, cyberbullying, organized crime, and promotion of terrorism. Durov is accused of failing to take action to curb the criminal use of his platform. We're watching as this unfolds. We're not surprised that this is happening to Telegram, first of all. X is on the chopping board in a way too, you know, because if you recall, Elon Musk is talking about freedom of speech, but he's censoring. He's censoring like crazy anything that is so-called anti-Semitic. So he's safe for now because he censors anything pro-Palestinian, or mostly so. But he was very much involved in tweeting during the riots in England recently, talking about there's going to be a civil war and so on. And he's doing a whole lot of that still. You know, what is being described by the puppet masters and the cult as far right or far left. Far right is an interesting term. Far left is an interesting term. It's smoke and mirrors. They're using it to confuse you. It is all one and the same at the end of the day. We'll have a conversation about that another time because we really do need to have a conversation about that. But here we are. So we see this happening to the owner of Telegram. And when I talked about dystopia, how many of you have watched The Handmaid's Tale? Is it called Yes, A Handmaid's Tale. Or The Handmaid's Tale. I think it's called one of those. Where they're in the red nun habits and the white thing. The Handmaid's Tale, I think it's called. If you've watched that, then this is where we are. The Handmaid's Tale. No, I am very serious. I know I'm laughing, but it's a Miss Lou kind of laugh. The Handmaid's Tale. That was dystopia. That was, predictive programming. Remember we talked about that before in this space. That was predictive programming. It's a futuristic dystopian novel, and they made a movie out of it. The author is Margaret Atwood. It was published in 1985. It is set in a near future New England in a patriarchal, totalitarian, theonomic state known as the Republic of Gilead, and which overthrew the United States government. You have to watch that movie or read the book. It's a series. When I started watching it, I knew immediately this was predictive programming. This is where it's heading. But then how would it get there in terms of how do you take the so-called freedoms or what appear to be freedoms? For example, social media is what it is. How do you take that back? But they have already begun to take that back because they are now in England. If you look at those who have been arrested, people who have been arrested, including persons who retweet, persons who go on Twitter and write something about what you're thinking. And so they're policing that. The Keir Starmer government has announced, and we talked about that a few weeks ago, they have announced that they have already set up part of their MI5, MI6 thingy to police the social media. Now, we're going to see how that balloons out. We're going to see how that mushrooms out to the United States, because we see already that whole sitting in Congress the other day about TikTok. And you know how I feel about TikTok. I think there needs to be some kind of censorship. But what they are doing is now trying to take that platform away from those who currently own it to use it to weaponize it for their own selves. And we see they have already started to do that. Look at the DNC. Look at what happened at the DNC. They call them influencers. But they have pulled all the little young ones who have some amount of influence from TikTok. They planted them in the DNC. Now they have them talking to the world, the DNC talking points. So it is unfolding before our eyes, and here we are. Predictive programming has made it so that we are not questioning the things that are unfolding before us. We are taking them to mean that it's development, it's progress, and nothing is wrong with it because we have been programmed to think that way. And at the same time, they're taking our rivers from us and our woodlands and our watershed areas. So for those of us who would walk away from all of this and go into our woodlands and go by our rivers, they have blocked us off from the sea. For us here in Jamaica, it's going to be like really difficult to even escape, because if you look at what's happening in Jamaica, Jamaica is an island, but it is becoming a landlocked country. And I've been saying that for many moons now. Jamaica is a landlocked country, and they are fencing off Jamaica. So as you drive around Jamaica, which is such a tiny little island, you are met with fences and walls, not picket fences, barbed wire fences and link chain fences and walls. These fences are going up in areas around the island because this is an island. So what is happening? And though they have sold these areas that they are fencing off to foreigners, it means then we really do not have access. It's more than access now. It's also a matter of security, of defense, of escape. So we can't even find the rivers. We can't get to the sea. We can't jump into the ocean. We can't take out a boat and just go boom and move. No, because we are landlocked, so we're going to have to take to the hills. We've got miles to go before we sleep. Let me take a break. All right, busy in and out. It's a family affair this morning. My husband is joining me in studio, and we're going to be having this discussion I told you about earlier. We're looking at community medical consideration for back to school, scope and impact. Back to school medical. My daughter Nia Manifa Teishi is also in the house working with Katania this morning, right, Katania? So she's your assistant. All right, so the production team is tight. All right, we have a lot to get through this morning as we get back to school, as we look forward. By the way, Nia, congratulations. Katania, she just passed two subjects in the fourth form. You see her there, She got a distinction in English and a nice grade in maths. She's in the 39% of those who pass maths in the region, and she took it in fourth form. So congratulations while she's in the house with us. Congratulations, Nia. She got a 1 in English and in fourth form. Very good, very, very, very good. And in the 39% of those who pass maths, and she did that in fourth form. I'm really proud of you, Nia. All right, and so she's here this morning because, you know it, girl, you're still happy work with your mother. And she's here, and worst of all, your father is here this morning also. So it is what it is. It's a family affair, but it's a very serious discussion that we're going to be having this morning. Dr. Green, of course, is a medical doctor, and one of the things I know, having been married to Dr. Green for umpteen years, is that at this time of the year, and he talks about it a lot, you have the back-to-school medicals. We know that. We also know that as a parent over time with our own child, that this time of year is back-to-school medical. So what I'm doing this morning is that we're broadening that out to say that this is back-to-school time, and medical in this context speaks to what we have outlined to you before, community medical considerations for back to school, scope and impact. So we're looking at this anxiety. And I'm going to ask Dr. Green, as you adjust your mic, Dr. Green, what number mic you're on there? This is number what? Let me see. All right, let me see if this is it. Morning.
Good morning.
Okay, brilliant. This is it. All right. So, welcome. Long time we don't work out together like this, but good to have you in the studio.
Right.
first of all, so we're in this time. You of course, as a medical doctor, to go to the very narrowest definition of what we're going to be looking at this morning. At this time of year, a whole lot of it's almost like a rush on doctors and clinics and clinics mainly and private doctors, isn't it?
Oh yes, this time of year is typical with anticipating back to school. There's a lot of to do to get the medicals done and the preparation surrounding that.
Well, when we were going to school, we never used to have no medical like that. I don't remember that we had to do medicals.
No, not at all. I mean, those times your parents would just give you a normal worm out and so.
Wash out.
Wash out.
After mango season, senna and salt.
Right, and
herbs.
You have certain herbs that you'd use there, your senna and so on.
Mm.
And things like castor oil and things like those.
Castor oil, you take one, you get a spoonful of something. Which oil was in that?
Well, castor oil, isn't it? You just have to take a small amount.
But we used to get one spoonful of something too, which is like, you almost like them a drench you. It's like a spoon, you get one spoonful of the oil in your hand. Or bitters, it's a bitters.
Yeah, cod liver oil, which is
cod liver oil.
Yeah, difficult to swallow.
Yeah, but we do have to swallow it though. One spoonful of cod liver oil.
Right.
Sometime during the year, and then back to school after summer when you're going to a new grade now. Proper washout.
Yes.
Right.
That washout goes as far as involving things such as brook locks in some cases.
No, that is a dangerous thing, book locks. Book locks. Listen, I know all the Gen X's I would recognize, and the baby boomers recognize. I don't think the millennials and the Gen Zs recognizing book locks, but book locks will turn you off of your favorite chocolate, and this is what it did for a lot of us. But so we were taking these our parents were giving us these stuff. So what changed?
Right. Well, with time, they realized that probably there were more type of illnesses. Mm-hmm. There were more illnesses.
Yeah, your paper, I mean, a lot of nice.
Yes, there are more illnesses probably that, especially communicable illnesses that would take place in the school. So, they realize that to preempt these type of disruptions, once the school start, then it's best to do some checks before admission and so on. And in addition to that, as time go on and people were more aware of certain disabilities and so on, that would cause disruption. For example, if a child had some disability and it was not noticed or observed and was sent to a regular school, they may not be able to cope in that environment. And so they would have to be now up and lifted and then try to be put in some special ed schools, for example. Yes, so the medical can preempt those type of disruptions.
Right, because a lot of this was missed. That's true. This is what was definitely missed in our time going to school.
Yes.
Where you would miss the other disabilities, whether physical or psychological. You'd miss those. But a doctor would pick up on that going through the medicals.
Right.
If there's some autism or learning disability or...
That's right. So those things are critical because when those in previous times they would have gone unnoticed, and maybe because at the time there was no institutions available for referrals, then such students would have to battle it out as best they could in the setting that they were destined to fail.
So we can see the benefits of the medical, how things are now. But there must have been some great benefits from when we did grow up, though. I run up and down through the whole summer. I eat every fruit that we could have found on the tree. And, you play outside all day long, no social media situation. And then, you eat mango until mango out of season. And then you get to wash out and you're gone back to school. There would have been benefits if you...
Oh, yes. Well, definitely if we are just comparing times. The immediate benefits there from the greater amount of outdoor activities that would have been present in former times. As you say, exercising, running up and down, getting the benefits of the fresh air and the sunlight, vitamin D. With the present generations to a greater extent, they are more indoors, more on digital devices, and less interaction, less activity.
And I know there was an article in a paper on World Physical Activity Day, April this year, where the headline was, we are subjecting our children, are we subjecting our children to poor health outcomes? And they talk about some of those stuff you're looking at there, the sedentary lifestyles and so on.
Yes.
And they were making some calls for more physical activity. So we'll come to that in a little while. But as far as the topic that we're going to be looking at this morning now, so we just colloquially call it back to school medical, so that everybody understand. But broadly, community medical consideration for back to school, scope and impact. Break that down for us.
Right. Well, basically, once we are in this period of back to school, we come to realize that although we would narrowly focus on the students, we have to look in this day and age on the plethora of categories that we have, both of the institutions and the students, because if you take it to the nth degree, we start from as low as institution like the daycare. So even babies are brought in because working parents has to oftentimes leave babies or toddlers, 1 to 3 year olds, at a daycare center. So the daycare itself is a de facto institution and would have to come up with the requirements. Since there are a group of toddlers, babies there, then the same precautionary measures would be applicable. And so sometimes, even at that age, they have to be examined to make sure that they are okay and that they don't have any communicable diseases, viruses, and the like, cough and cold, hand, foot, and mouth, and things such as those, probably little ringworm, fungal, and etc., which would apply through all the school age as well. So the medical not only zoom in on the individual child, but it thinks of the child whether he has any condition that could affect the collective, both the caregiver, the teachers, and other students alike. And so, as I say, as far as institution goes, we have the daycare, we have kindergarten, primary, secondary school, probably community colleges, UWI. And the student range from, as I say, from 1 to 3 at that age group.
So they're doing medicals at UWI too? You have to do medicals?
Yeah, if students are going to any college or university, medicals are required and blood tests.
Okay.
And, just to broaden it to the limit, even if you're a postgrad, if you're going now, you may be required to do it. So at any stage, you can become a student.
Okay.
So the students could be
So the scope is wide.
It's wide. It could be from 1 to 70 years old.
And all right, so in other words, and you're saying it's important, you think, for this to happen as you look on the wider community,
right?
In terms of the connection back to community, I think is so important in all of this that I think we're missing it as a nation. We miss this even when we think about, all right, so go, it's back to school now. You have to get your medical done,
right?
That there's a thinking of community at the base of this that we don't necessarily see unless somebody points it out, like you're doing now.
Right, yes, that is true because, back to school, the student is at the nucleus or the focus of activities. But around the student, of course, there are the parents, the guardians, there are the teachers, as I said, the institutions and the supporting staff, social workers. And there is things such as the dressmakers. They are very busy and overworked now, the tailors, the cosmetologists, the robots, the taxi drivers, and the bus drivers who have to transport students often over long distances. For example, there may be students in, say, Senton who are going to school in Clarendon on a daily basis, back and forth.
That is a long journey.
Yes, Homewood and so on.
Yes.
Right.
Homewood is...
People are from here going to Ferncourt, all over the place. So.
Yeah. Our children are traveling some serious journeys. And I know children are traveling from, say, St. Anne, St. Mary to Kingston for school, and they are traveling
on a daily basis.
Yes, and so you're saying in that situation, you don't think just of a child. You're thinking of community now, up to the taxi driver, the bus driver, the person who's going to transport that person.
Right.
Who's going to pick up that person from school, and then I suppose issues of security
will come into play. Definitely. So all of these add up and, provide the requisite safety and environment for a successful outcome.
Right now, I think there's hardly any Jamaican household that's not right now thinking about September morning, back to school, and what that entails. And so back to school medical is what we're talking about this morning, but we mean something broader than just you going to the doctor and sitting down in the chair and going through the medical. And in this segment, we're talking about community medical consideration for back to school, scope and impact. We're done with the scope, Dr. Green, are we?
Well, we'll just now look, for example, at the child or the student for a minute, thereabout. And as I said, sometimes the conditions that are there, it's general examination to determine wellness of the child in all the different aspects, the mental status, the physical status, sense organs and ability for learning and so on. And then also you want to check if there are communicable diseases. For example, your coughs and colds, your flus, viral infections of many different sorts, hand, foot and mouth, you can flash in Mpox in there.
I was just going to say to them, never sure if I said monkeypox or Mpox, but they're saying Mpox now.
Right, which itself maybe just probably based on its gain of function history, maybe it stands for man-made.
Yes, so, that's a consideration.
Then now you have droplet infections, sneezing, coughing, and then you have contact such as probably skin conditions. And this similar type of thing with pustules that can burst and you can have contact. So those are things that can be screened for as well.
You're looking for COVID too? And
COVID, of course, yes. It's viral in its nature and so on. And then, of course, and those can affect the collective, not just the individual, but the collective. So in the individual child now, typically, you'll just look through the family histories and so on, see if the child is having any allergies so that they may know how to adjust his diet at school. Or if he's to be given medication at the health board, the nursing staff, they will know what to do. You will look for things such as asthma, or if he, the child, those things will be on the form as well. So they will know that sometime they may need emergency care, that they might have medication such as Ventolin and so on to hand to assist them.
And just a kind of a quick segue,
yes.
And you can tell me if we're right, but are we seeing more cases of asthma and everything else will come with asthma more than usual? Are we seeing well, just anecdotally, are we seeing a spike in those cases?
I would tend to agree with you because before there was a time not so far behind when you hardly diagnose asthma under 18 months, for example. You would probably just say it as some respiratory illness and so on. But according to the strict definition, the age groups that it's occurring at is getting lower and lower.
Do we have any idea why this is so?
Well, I am not aware of the particular studies, but just by general observation and so on, I would suspect that this has to do with pollution, increased pollution, and environmental and dietary factors.
And that you're talking about the mother now?
The mother herself and also the child exposed to it as well. For example, you have those who are intolerant to certain things in the diet. You have certain conditions, of course, that will predispose you. And we're living in environments that are now more polluted with frequent burnings, chemicals,
We're also seeing more eczema?
Oh, yes, because those form actually a spectrum. When it comes to allergies, eczema, sinus issues, and asthma, they are literally on the same spectrum at different levels, triggered by pollutants, which, become allergens and foreign bodies to the system, and those kickstart the immune response.
And I think a lot of what we would have been or we would be allergic to are now hidden in foods that we are consuming, especially when you're buying things off the shelf.
That is so true, because despite the call for bold labelings, for things, like, HPF and so on, highly processed foods, there are things that are on the shelves that are in a foreign language, probably mainly Chinese and so on. And so you really don't know what the ingredients are.
And the language was foreign before with scientific language.
Right.
Things are hidden in scientific terms. So after the whole word mono something another something another something glyceride something other.
The monosodium glutamine.
Right. So you have a lot of stuff hidden already, and then now we're getting other things coming in from other jurisdictions where we don't read that language, we don't understand that language.
Right.
But we just buy it because it probably look good. Or look tasty.
Or you may be familiar with it, recognize it, but it's just at the source, and
And I think the source is very important. I know I'm segueing a bit, but I suppose it's all relevant. Connected. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's definitely connected, because although the ingredients will have the main components of the thing that we are consuming, there are many that are not really required to or are left out, and including the preservatives, which those themselves can contain sulfites and other substances that can be very allergenic for some persons.
I saw a news story late last week, and I suppose I can check for it now, where there was a warning against noodles, and that's we call them noodles, the dry.
Is it the ramen type of stuff?
The ramen type of stuff.
Oh.
Those noodles, where they were saying there were 2 deaths connected to those noodles.
Wow.
And so there was a warning about those noodles. But one of the things is that those noodles are everywhere on our shelves. We don't even know what's in the packs because they're in Chinese or Mandarin or Japanese or some other language that we're not able to read. And so I wonder about the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that the foods that are coming into the island and that are hitting the shelves, that they are safe for consumption. Even we talk about food safety. We spend a lot of time, we talk a lot about food security, but this is now where we talk about food safety.
Safety. Well, I agree with that, because on any campus from, kindergarten right up to university, the ramen and the noodles are very popular with students. It's one of the easiest things you can prepare if you're on campus. You're coming home for a quick lunch or so. And so this is widely used right throughout all the institutions to some degree or the other.
And then now let me just say that I'm not quite sure if it's actually said ramen, but it's that I'm just trying to say what the
noodles.
What the noodle looked like. That one that you called that, it looks like that, right? So I'm trying to find the story because it was out earlier this week, but I'll find it in a little while.
In other words, it may not be that specific brand, but
right, it may not be that brand, but it looked like that. And then that takes us back now to the point you're making, that you're testing for. You're seeing more allergies.
And yes, and this it is true that these type of components, if you go even as far back now as you extrapolate to the food safety in general, even from the agricultural processing, whether it's the use of weed, pesticides such as glyphosate, Roundup, etc., and different things, these things are absorbed from the soil in vegetables, whether it's your typical common things, carrots, lettuce, things that people would buy naturally. And empirically, we observe or hear persons speaking about changing the taste and the texture and the flavor of lettuce and cabbage and so. And these changes quite likely may be due to the preparation and the planting processes and the involvement of a lot of chemicals, gramosone, Roundup, etc., and other stuff that can alter the composition of the vegetables and the plants. And these themselves, a lot of them, they are complex chemicals. So when they enter the body, they are proper, antigens, so to speak. They are foreign proteins in nature or so on, and they will evoke some immune response that can result in different reactions, such as eczemas, whether it's breathing problems, dermatitis, and the likes. So the nutrition is critical.
Yeah. And I'm going to invite you back to have a wider discussion about this very topic, because I suppose when children now turn up for your medical and you're presenting with some of these, that in some of these cases then there are other prescription drugs that come into play.
Right.
And this is how Big Pharma now, Big Pharma enter from food, because Big Pharma is also producing food.
Right.
Yeah.
And other conditions, as you mentioned, that spectrum, you check for sickle cell, because that's pretty common in Jamaica.
Oh, it is?
Oh, yes, it's fairly common. Maybe not as a full disease, but a lot of people have the trait. So the trait is where the parent has, the sickle cell gene, but is not having the two of them to have the full disease. So in such conditions, if the child has both parents with the sickle cell trait, the child has a possibility of having the full disease. And so those are things that can be preempted by proper prenatal counseling and testing, so that you can know what the status of the parents are before pregnancy, and certain conditions can be done.
And this takes us right back to the topic, community medical consideration.
Right.
It's always going back and forward to community, and this is why later on we're going to talk about the Ubuntu principles, because we are all connected.
Right, and that is correct, because the fact is that when you're looking at the child, he cannot be looked at in isolation. A family history will have to be done to see what conditions, obtained, if any, in the family that may have, genetic
all right,
disposition.
Let me take a quick break and we'll come back and look at some of the other illnesses, if we can call it, or diseases that you'll be looking for in children for the back-to-school medical. Leading into August 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to August 18, 19. After all of that summer vibe and summer body and summer thing and so on, we are now turning our attention to school, back to school, and looking this morning at a broad topic of community, looking at community medical consideration for back to school scope and impact. Back to school medical, we're going to open the phone lines later on. Dr. Arthur Green is a medical doctor. He's in the house with us, talking us through how we live, our lifestyle, can impact our health, but also specifically for those who are going back to school, whether you're a student or you're a parent, because you're going back to school, to remember that. And I don't mean physically, you're sending your children back to school. So how the entire community is impacted by the health of the 1 or 2 or 3 going back to school. Can you imagine when it's 4 or 5 going back to school?
Oh,
that's a lot of medicals.
Yeah, yes, it's indeed a lot, and all of them are important.
Yeah. All right. So you were talking us through some of what in this segment.
Yes. So one of the other common issues to check on is what we call fits or epilepsy or seizures. Believe it or not, there are quite a few cases of those, and some are not detected at birth. Some comes on spontaneously. Some may be due to trauma, and a lot of the cases, the exact trigger and the causes are not known. Right, but it's good to find out, and when it is known, for the students to be properly controlled, because as you know, in an environment, in the school setting, they will be taking precautions so that they're not necessarily in high places, or that if they should have an episode, then they will know how to treat them. So those are also critical things. So this is not necessarily something hereditary, but this is a brain dysfunction that might be due probably to viral infections. It may be due to trauma or some other ingestion, or prenatal disposition, or if you want to extend it, as you said earlier, where the mother's natal care, prenatal care is critical if it involves alcoholism and smoking. So, the parents, especially the mothers, can avoid that. And of course, if you want to, be inclusive, even if the mother herself is not smoking, second-hand smoking from the partner,
Or
can
spaces
also,
that they're in.
spaces can also have their impact.
And I suppose in cases, a lot of things we take for granted. For example, you get the paper, it's time for the medical, it's back to school. But there are many parents, I think, over time, and communities, extended families and communities, that are sometimes surprised to find that, a child who seemed healthy turn up for the medical, but not really healthy.
Right, that can often be the case. And when you say not really healthy, maybe it's something that's not easily recognizable.
Such as?
Such as, for example, we might test for the vision. So we look to see maybe he's seeing okay from one eye, but not so much from the other eye.
Okay. And hearing too, I suppose.
Right, and hearing is critical because these are the key organs that will allow them to learn. So visual impairment, so something maybe as simple as, well, maybe there'll be some adjustment based on the age of the child. And so if he's not seeing well from the back, he might be able to just be put closer to the board or to the front. If he's not hearing well, investigation will be done to see how, what is the degree of impairment. And, those sometimes may be due to things that are not really affecting the auditory function. It may be due to related conditions, for example, sinus issues, congestion, that can impair the hearing, or it may be just as simple as excessive wax build up in the ear.
Excessive wax?
Yes,
What about lifestyle diseases? Do you find...
Well, the most prominent, I would say now, lifestyle disease that is there is the childhood obesity that is now really literally a pandemic globally. And we are experiencing it here, I think, to the degree that we are now using the same North American lifestyle and the food exposure. And this is where the diet is critical.
Yes.
Because the subtle thing is that sometimes people genuinely are not eating a lot of stuff and they're wondering what is happening. But all of this obesity and these impairment, metabolic syndrome and pre-diabetic conditions are coming from the drinks, the sweet drinks. And so this is the latest thing that can catch people off guard.
And I wonder about this, because I know I heard the Minister of Health, for so many years now he's been focusing on this, and there have been discussions even through the Ministry of Education about the availability of these drinks in schools.
Right.
But to me, not much, if anything, is being done about withdrawing these or lessening access to these sweet drinks, sodas and so on.
Right,
it's a school compound.
Difficult to regulate it. It would have to be at the level of the producers of these products to make the adjustment.
But for the producer, the bottom line is profit. So they want the children addicted to these things. Because this is how it works.
Well, that's the right word, because sugar is really addictive. So some of these little children drinks that you see there in these tiny containers, some of them have as much as 12 teaspoons of granulated sugar incorporated
Goodness gracious.
in it. And so when small children drink these things, they get insulin rush, and the child is all over the place. Kin popalik, run up and down, and it can be controlled.
But then you diagnose them with ADHD, and then the big pharma comes in on the other end.
Well, that is a possible paradox, because definitely they will be hyperactive, difficult to control, and also will want another shot of such drink again to keep them up and going. So
there's an addiction that develops.
It develops.
Because sugar, you say...
It's addictive,
Yeah.
yes, definitely.
I think we have had many conversations about how addictive sugar is, and I'm not quite sure if it's penetrating the nation. But spend a minute and talk to us about the how addictive sugar is.
Well, some people put it akin to cocaine, because you get such a high from it and euphoric feeling that once it's gone, because the insulin, the sugar will cause an insulin spike, and that spike will wipe the sugar out, and so you will have the urge for another shot of it again. So in that sense...
So it's just as addictive as cocaine.
Right. And not to make sugar itself the enemy, because, it's important for proper brain function. You will need glucose along the way. But it's the type and the source of it and the actual distribution that can make the difference. So where you have the sugar just, by itself, as in these sodas and fizzy drinks, that will cause these spikes. If you will get the same thing from a fruit, mango or orange or any fruit, melon and so on, of course glucose and fructose are there, but they are accompanied by cellulose and other fibers which would mitigate against that spike, that sudden spike, and then of course, these are things that would have a moderate to low glycemic index, so it would be a safer thing, although sugar is present. So sugar is not the enemy of itself, but the source and the composition of the component, the carriers, are critical.
We just have a few minutes in this segment because we've broken this down in segments. So let's just try and wrap this segment in terms of looking at the scope and the impact.
Right. So these are very critical. One of the other things that may be not so common, but that you can look for, we talked about the hearing and the sight and so on, but you also look at coordination and balance. The person is able, agility and so on, the movement of the neck and the skeletal things. So some people who may be impaired here are those with such conditions such as cerebral palsy, which is not too uncommon. And of course, they will have problem with balance, coordination, and muscle weakness and movement. But, and we have special ed schools now. They are not everywhere, but there are institutions now available that they can be actually sent to, where they can,
I want to spend a minute just to talk about the learning disabilities, because how do you pick that up in the are you likely to pick that up in the medical?
Well, if it is previously undiagnosed, you may just in communicating with the child, depending on the age as well. It may be in the younger age groups, it may not be so readily picked up. But if you see somebody in the 10 and up age group to 13, in those areas where you question, in communication, you see how they answer questions, their name, address, and so on. You might pick up, some things may be due to probably their environment. Something may be just grammatical error, sentence formation, or hesitation, and in terms of responses. So you might find some unresponsiveness or hesitation in response, or even if you ask about some simple orientation as the time, the date, and so on, you may pick up some signs there that there is some disparity between comprehension and response. So that it may be subtle.
Yeah.
But
it would alert the doctor that, okay, there's something else happening here.
It may be, yes, it would alert them there. And of course, it was usually picked up in the classroom where the teacher themselves has more time with the students and will definitely pinpoint it as compared to the rest of the peers in the group. And such students, then now, they can be referred for specialist assessment.
All right, let me take a quick break and come back. We are inside of the Africa Forum, our back to school edition, because we're just a few days out of the full back to school. Many teachers have already gone back to school. They themselves are doing medicals. We have, for example, a report or a story here. A study finds that teacher deaths are alarming. JTA actually commissioned a study to find out why. Always to be blessed. Yes, Dwight, we love it. Okay, so we're looking at back to school medical. Broadly, though, to look at various issues relating to that. In this segment, we've been looking at community medical consideration for back to school scope and impact. We're going to break that down as the morning progresses. And I suppose to kind of help us to segue into that in just another 15 minutes, and we can pick it up when we get there, is to say that the the concern about the deaths of several relatively young educators over the last few years. The Jamaica Teachers Association is commissioning a study to examine the correlation between the stress levels of teachers and their mental and physical well-being. Over 50 teachers have died since the start of 2024, with several of these, however, with several of these, however, from chronic illnesses. And then it goes on to say, former JTA President Leighton Johnson, in an interview, said since taking office in August 2023, he had interacted with the families of 28 teachers who had either fallen ill or died suddenly. This is very sad. Mr. Johnson said, due to the high intensity of the job and the deaths in seemingly quick succession, he thought it prudent to conduct a study as a legacy project. He noted that the study was commissioned to move from anecdotes to have that empirical data to present to the nation, to make recommendations to the Ministry of Education, to teachers, to school administrators, and to give teachers a strategy how to deal with these situations. The research will be undertaken by former educator and Jamaican author Dr. Sharika Simone and should get underway in August 2024. So we're talking about this month.
Wow.
The former JTA president said teachers have been encouraged to prioritize their health. He ended by saying, we have been encouraging them by and large to know your numbers. There are those individuals who indicate that, I have this niggling pain. It is not debilitating. It is just there and, I just let it alone. We're saying to them, he said, stop, get checked, understand what is happening. And from that perspective, then you can take corrective measures in many regards. So this is when we talk about community and back to school medical, teachers obviously involved in that. That wider community.
Definitely. They are integral because they are the ones who will be manning the institutions and the main purveyor of information to the students. So the teachers are critical in their contribution to national development. I think they are really underrated.
Yes.
And the impact, when we are looking and seeing the results, that's the only time that we realize the importance of the teachers and the numbers in terms of, weight and pressure and medication and all these things. I think the numbers that the teachers may be interested in is the number of zeros and their monthly salaries.
Yeah. Where he says, know your numbers.
You're right. So those numbers should be taken into account.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that. Teachers are undervalued, underpaid, underrespected, underestimated, and overworked. And now we have a whole lot of different conversations happening on the island regarding teachers coming in and so on. I see the Minister of Education coming out to say there are no preferential treatments on teachers coming in from overseas, but it's something that I think we look at as we go through the month of the rest of August and then into September. These are issues, if it affects one of us, these are issues that affect the entire community. As we wrap this segment, as we move into the 8 o'clock hour, what do you want us to know about impact?
Well, as just
to wrap that,
to retract from when you were saying about disabilities that we may be able to pick up, there is one called the autism spectrum disorder. Autism, that can sometimes be observed or suspected at a young age because, for example, it will be noticeable that, for example, a child may not make proper eye contact or not communicate or they may not smile back and so on. Some little eccentricity, may not be that marked, but sometimes keen observations can unveil such behavior which can be followed up. So these are basically, neurological disorders to some extent.
So when we talk about back to school medical, it's a wide range.
Right.
It's a
wide range.
Proper medical that the students go through.
Of course, as you said, we look further to see how the other players, because when we look at the medical, just in this narrow sense, we are looking at just the student. But, the student is at the center, like the hub, but there is a lot of supporting players around them, involving them, including the parents, guardians, and the teachers that you mentioned.
And this is what this should be our thinking generally, because we are becoming a society individualism as opposed to community. So we're moving away from community and are perfecting this whole individualism that comes with a doctrine of prosperity. I reject the prosperity doctrine for a reason, not because I don't want people to progress. I reject it because as it is now, the ideology is individualism and not community. And so I think we can move away from that word prosperity that the EEF gave to us, and to say community. Yes. I think when you talk about community development, community progress, community together, community rising, community renaissance, you can use 101 terms to throw it politically, if you wish, into any political campaign. And it can still mean that we all are going to prosper. We are going to prosper as individuals, but we're going to do this together as a community and not one by one in the kind of neoliberal way that we're doing it right now. And then if you don't, if somebody question it, you say them bad mind. You know, because this is what we're seeing now. You know, what I find it interesting is that I'm watching some comments coming out of St. Vincent, and there's just so much talk of bad mind that I am shocked. I'm saying, wow, this is crazy. We have to move away from this bad mind mentality, this bad mind ideology, this new bad mind thing that they've thrown like a spanner in the works at us in Jamaica, and then to kind of flip it on its head and to start again talking about community and the Ubuntu principles. So we're going to get there. All right, so let me take another break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at the period of anxiety as our students go back to school, social and economic impacts on students, parents, and teachers. So that was a nice little segue into that. All right, we take a quick break. The Big A comes in with the Sunday Sunshine. Thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum this morning. We are parents ourselves, so we are also in the back-to-school mode. We understand what that entails for most parents. We are seeing this also as community. We understand how communities are being impacted. And so in the next segment, we want to look at this period of anxiety. Before we do that, though, there is an ongoing situation. The Education Ministry has said, and this is coming out, it's from IRFM News. This is from August 22, 2024. Education Ministry insists that no child should be barred from school because of dress code or grooming issues. That is also an issue that can cause anxiety, that can cause stress in some of our students. So it says, with students set to return to school in a week and a half, Education Minister Favour Williams is insisting that no child should be locked out of school because of dress code issues. The issue has been a perennial problem, with students being denied access to classes due to hairstyle and incorrect uniform, among other things. Speaking at the Jamaica Teachers Association annual conference in Trelawney, Mrs. Williams said school administrators should implement procedures to treat infractions. That is good to know, because there's a ongoing situation where you're sending home children because
Yes, probably a delicate balance in the sense that sometimes institutions are trying to maintain some degree of discipline. Mm-hmm. But for example, if a person is a Rastafarian and so on, definitely those are conditions that should have been readily accepted. We are so way beyond those type of things at this time. And the greater good, of course, for example, if a child has shown up and is not properly meeting the requirements, if the child is from a great distance, I guess it's not safe to shut them out, but they should at least be allowed on the compound where they can be monitored and warned, probably for detention or something.
Right. If a child is breaking the school rule, and if the rule is within the ministry protocols, because schools are doing their own things, and the ministry comes out and says, but we have the locks allowed. Why are you sending home the child without locks? Right. It has gone to the courts now, for example, for locks. And then there's this other thing of how long the skirt is for students, how long the uniform is, and it's supposed to be down to the ankle. That's a whole other thing that I know is going to come up again. For young girls, that take us right back into the Handmaid's Tale that we're talking about. Right. These rules must have been, I don't know where they come from, but they have these young girls with them uniform down to them ankle. It is ridiculous. Don't make no sense. Can't see the thinking behind it. It could be below the knee, and it is just as okay down to the ankle. All right. So that's coming from the Ministry of Education. Let us see what plays out. How people's own insecurities are projected onto students. That's also another thing too that I suppose we need to look at.
Right.
All right, so in this segment, Dr. Green, we want to talk now about this whole period, which for many students and parents alike is a period of anxiety.
Most definitely, because, as things normally pan out, you try to enjoy the summer holiday, and, before you know it, we are down to the end of the holidays, and we look at the situation now of anxiety, maybe from the perspective of the child to some degree, but also certainly from the perspective of the parents and the guardians, because the back to school will come with uniforms, it comes with books, it comes with a lot of attendant, equipments and so that are necessary, school bags and all of those things, tuition, and a lot of fees. Mm-hmm. And the parents, there are parents who are single parents, for example, and guardians, there are parents who are unemployed, who have unsteady income. Mm-hmm. And so for them it's a challenge. They will have to throw partners or take loans and things like those. So it's an anxious period. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The anticipation can be at the level of the child, if the child is going to a new school or coming from, primary to high school, or being transferred from one era to the next. So he's going to another school, even though he's not a seventh grader, he might be at grade 10, but still a new environment. And so those can be issues which may seem small to us, but in the mind of a child, these can be very, mm-hmm. very big. And the anxiety affects people or different persons in different ways. Mm-hmm. So anxiety can trigger panic attack for some people. It can trigger palpitations. It can trigger asthmatic episode. Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit more about those, but then to focus a bit on panic attacks, because this is something that I think it happens. It's more prevalent than we think. But how to recognize this?
Well, typically, the person, you have an unpleasant feeling, you have palpitations for some persons, feeling of restlessness and fatigue and even nausea. These feelings, they just come out of the blue when there is a trigger to invoke them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes, and so for some people, they may be a one-off thing, but then now it becomes a problem when it is more frequent and long-lasting.
And here's another quick segue. I know last school year, might have been the year before, we had in quite a few of our schools, a handful of our schools, what might have been panic attacks, what might have been other kind of psychological behavior, a group behavior happening at different schools that people identify as demonic, people identify as dopey their school, people identify as possession. There's so many discussions about what all of those things were, coming right out of COVID, actually.
Okay.
From your own thinking as a medical practitioner, what are some of the reasons that could lead to something, just to what we saw, those group behaviors that resemble a group panic attack?
Well, it would have to be properly investigated. And to see, as I said, it's a group, and so that's what would catch our attention immediately. Why would a group of persons in close proximity be seemingly behaving in a similar fashion. Well, we don't know, exactly what is there, but from a neurological standpoint, it would have to be some form of entrainment. And this entrainment, could be triggered by certain frequencies. It can be triggered by certain music, like whether it's at a 440 frequency. You could have a music in the background, for example, or somebody could be speaking and addressing them on a topic that is very sensitive. And if persons happen to be, related to those conditions, it could act as a trigger. Yeah, so...
So there are just many things that could result in some of these things that we saw.
Right. It can be due to, for example, incense burning, and some of these scents can have impact on if inhaled, for example, can have neurological impact that can result in type of abnormal behavior or unexpected behavior.
All right, so let's go back to looking at the period of anxiety, which so many of us are going through now. I know most of Jamaica are going through this period of anxiety because this is a new school year. So, every student is moving into a new class, hopefully, and not quite sure who are those students who are going to be repeating, if schools are still allowing repeats, but if you're repeating, it is also another level of anxiety. But suffice to say that people are moving into a new class. And so let's look at the students first, because we talk about the social anxiety and how these can result in other forms of physical conditions.
Right. So if we look at anxiety broadly, we can look at it from the point of view of being a type of emotion. And so from that general point of view, the emotion may not necessarily be bad. So you have students who are looking forward to seeing their friends, looking forward to, for example, they're anxious because during the holiday they were going to a trip to a very interesting place, and that type of anticipation is also anxiety, but in a good way, so to speak. So if you're going on a trip to the Blue Mountain or somewhere, or you're told that you're going to the beach or something, the child now, the night before the trip, he can't sleep, he's very excited. He probably put on his bath trunk from in his going to bed.
And I dream.
Yeah, so that is one level of anxiety, but it's not negative in its impact. But you have anxiety where the anticipation or the expectation is that invokes some form of intrepidation. And so going into a high class, it's a new teacher or it's a new school, the child doesn't know what to expect. And this anxiety can result in, headaches, dizziness, lack of sleep, even bedwetting, depending on the age and stuff like those. So each person, in terms of guardian, in the home there has to be awareness of this, and also in the classroom. Definitely, because sometimes if it is not observed or noticed, for example, anxiety, apart from it will cause you to have concentration lapse. So if it is an ongoing situation, it will impact learning. Yes. Homework, attire, it will affect you in your behavior, generally speaking.
And this can be overlooked as one of the reasons why the child might appear not to be engaged or learning, as you said.
That's right. And then now it would carry us in the loop backwards to see what might be the cause of the anxiety. It can be several causes. For example, it may be that the child is home with a single parent and he has to leave home without breakfast. Maybe he has to pay a fare to go to school, and now he has to juggle between the fare and his snack or lunch money.
He or she.
And so therefore, these type of things are real issues given the high cost of living that obtains in this country, and the number of persons that are single parents and unemployed. So the frustration of the guardian, usually the mother or the woman, boils over, not deliberately, onto the child, because the child realizes the parent is trying their best, but it's difficult to make ends meet. And so they literally absorb the stress.
And the parents might not be aware of this.
No.
That the child is absorbing that economic stress.
Right.
So they have their own social stress dealing with.
Yes.
But then absorbing the economic stress out of the home.
Right.
Recognizing the struggle just to get them off to school.
And so if we look at that particular child in that condition, that child in that level of anxiety is more prone to have a poor conflict resolution. So he'll be more prone to act violently as a way of ventilating his frustration on another student. And so it puts another student at risk.
And as you talk about violence in that space, in the school space, this is something that is a reality for Jamaica, in Jamaican schools right now. We're coming out, granted we've been off for 2 months and some, but when we left the spaces for the summer holidays, we left some very violent spaces where children were acting out, hurting each other with all kinds of implements, where guns were being carried into school, children shooting each other and so on, fights and gang rapes and battery, and a lot of that was what we left last term.
Right.
We can't take it for granted that has changed.
Right. And so that would carry us back now to the impact of communities. So, for example, the community in which a child grows, certain social and behavioral patterns in that community will impact the child and persons living in that community in order for them to get along in that thing. And that is where the community has no cultural framework or basis upon which to act. So that it just, organically evolve based upon needs and wants, the type of what you call eater food mentality, and just the struggle to survive. And which would in that naturally generate violence, abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, and physical abuse. And so the product of such a community would really be reflected in the students and the persons that come out of them. And so they would now have to make a very drastic adjustment when they go into another environment that is different.
So we really can't underscore, we can't say enough about the importance of community.
Right.
If we're going to change anything, then community has to be at the center of it.
Definitely.
Which a community is made up of families.
Right.
So you're talking about individual homes.
Yes.
But on a wider scale, the community.
Right. So as I said, the composition of the community, at the nucleus of it may be families. And from families you extend to neighbors. And the neighbors now that spreads throughout the entire community. And then you have persons who would be in the community having specific roles. So you may have, say, a teacher, you might have a nurse, a doctor in the community, you might have a JP, you have a footballer, sportsman, but different type of role models are there in different domains. And all of this collectively impacts the community. But the community would be best. Of course, we'll come to the solutions where the communities would be best impacted when it is more structured.
All right, so when we're dealing with the solutions in another hour, we'll kind of revisit that and then to look at this within the context of Ubuntu or Hunu or Butu. It's interesting how these three words mean the very same thing depending on the language you're talking, because you say Ubuntu, then you're in Shona, in Xhosa or Zulu. It's a Bantu language in any case.
Yes.
You say Hunu, Uno, you're in Shona, which is also another Bantu language. You say Butu, it means the very same thing. All three mean the very same thing. So we already have them three words that we were working with toward them long time.
Yes.
Although we mischaracterized Buto, but we had them on our tongues. We understood those words in terms of our ability to say them and to ingrain them in our community. So when we come to talk about community later on, we go there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to look at because we're talking about the period of anxiety.
Right.
And I want to look at how this period of anxiety impacts a parent, especially the economic anxiety, and then how school in just a few days' time. A lot of teachers, as I said before, have already gone back to school. The parents gone back to because you're buying the uniforms, you're buying the shoes, you're buying everything that your child need, or you're trying to get it all back. The informal commercial operators who are selling in the markets, you already gone back to school because you did go to Panama and so on, wherever else you go and shop already. And you're back with your barrels and so on, and some of them lock up in the market and some of them not. And so this is an entire industry. This back to school is an entire industry in Jamaica. It's an ongoing industry.
Yes.
But there is a material manifestation point around this time where so many people, their livelihoods depend on this period. But at the same time, the parents are facing a hell of a time. The light bills, the electricity bill coming out of burial, not up here, so. We're still trying to figure out what is hitting us or what hit we and how that really go. So you're already dealing with that. The price of food coming out of COVID and even before COVID, astronomical. We're talking about one patty costing how much?
$300 rough round off too.
So patty and poor people food again. This is to me, this is crazy because patty a school lunch, when we were going to school, it was patty and cornbread, right? So, but later on for the millennials, it was just patty because they couldn't buy the patty and cornbread. And then now for the Gen Zs, it's even worse. It is one patty. Millennials could buy two. One patty now, one. And when we were going to school, you could buy patty and cornbread. For me, I cannot, for the life of me, I can't see it. I don't know if you can see it, Dr. Green. How is it that one patty costs how much? 300?
Oh, yes. You can just round it off. 290, 300.
I ask you to tell me why, but for crying out loud, why? That is expensive,
It is expensive. It is not able to, it's not filling. So, you will be unfilled, you're not going to be.
Because when you're not going to be satisfied. When we were going to school, the patty them, so we like to look back, but the patty them used to be, whatever was in it, Terry Gillette patty in Highgate, everybody know Terry Gillette, TG patty. It was food, it was beef, and it was, the beef was in there straight from the cow, just. So you were full once you had a patty. So what are children, and to me, the patty still remains one of the healthiest lunch meal that is available to children on school compounds.
Right.
If you don't put too much butter in the crust.
Yes. Yeah, definitely it's a popular thing. It's been there for decades and people look forward to it. It's almost cultural in terms of school canteens that you'll have access to a patty and a drink, patty and
I think the Ministry of Education should subsidize the patties at all schools. Subsidize them. Or a private sector organization just say, all right, we're going to subsidize patties in every school in Jamaica. A private sector company can do that. We can't just not call a name, but for crying out loud, enough companies can say, all right, we just take care of the patties.
Yes.
Make each child have a patty, at least.
Definitely, that something like that should be and could be done. It's a moral obligation of the private sectors, because that is where the wider community concept now comes in again, in order to, get a better national outcome. Because at the end of the day, the students of today will be the leaders of tomorrow, and their, achievements and their potential contributions will determine the quality of life down the road. So,
and this takes us back to the parent, because here we go, what the parents can afford.
Right.
So let's just talk about this now, the spirit of anxiety.
Definitely, the high cost of living, as you mentioned, is critical, whether it's due to mortgages and other bills. Parents might have certain NCDs, these chronic non-communicable diseases, typically diabetes and high blood pressure, which are very prevalent in our society. And there are a lot of persons who are unaware that they are having these conditions because they are not diagnosed. And so that goes back to what you mentioned earlier, where some persons, including teachers, may die suddenly because there were issues that were there but were not recognized. And so when it's pushed over the edge, then you can have unfavorable outcomes. So, for example, the person might have hypertensive issues. The person may not be compliant to the medication, or they may be unable to afford medication, so they are using their herbs and natural approaches, but the control may not be adequate. So if such a person is now exposed to a sudden time constraint and very acute stress, these type of, because the anxiety itself would act as a type of threat. So it would involve, the whole adrenaline mechanism, fight or flight. And so with a sudden surge in blood pressure, it could push you into the experience of a stroke, a transient ischemic attack. You could have fainting spells. Any of these conditions could be pushed over the edge.
And we're noticing, well, tell me if I just may again, but are we seeing a spike in strokes and heart attacks, anecdotally speaking?
Well, the absolute numbers I'm unaware, I'm not sure. But yes, just by hearing persons reporting that so-and-so had a stroke, we are hearing it more commonly these days. Mm-hmm. And that is probably due to the fact that the number one cause is very common, which is uncontrolled high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. Right. And as we say,
uncontrolled high blood pressure, and high blood pressure can develop for many reasons, including stress.
Yes, stress can definitely be one of the conditions, but the danger of it is that it is known as a silent killer because it's not carrying any symptoms. So your pressure may be sky high, 300 over 120, and you don't have a headache. Mm-hmm. So although some persons claim that they're able to know when the blood pressure is high because they feel stiffness and this and that, we can't dispute it because persons living in their body would know their bodies to some extent. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that the typical blood pressure elevation is without symptoms and goes unnoticed because the body will try to adjust. And
you might be going through this period of high anxiety and high stress,
right.
Not even recognizing or not paying attention
yes.
To the signs,
right.
If there are any. But this is you might have no symptoms at all. This is what you're saying.
And this is persons who are unaware. But even for those who are aware, the person has high blood pressure, is on medication, maybe he's not compliant, maybe he's not able to afford it now that back to school is coming up on them. And the anxiety of seeing that a lot of things are required in a short time and you don't have no money to match it. Mm-hmm. These type of situation can trigger, poor outcomes, fainting spells, strokes,
And there are many parents who are listening now who have not just one, but 2 and 3, and sometimes even 4 children who are now going back to school, and are really finding it difficult to pull everything together that is needed, considering also again where lunch money are gonna come from. One patty costs $300, and you have four of them or 3 of them. You have to buy a school uniform. You probably can only get 1 for each, that kind of thing. But if you get 1 for each, you have to go wash more often. It means you have to go buy more soap powder and so on and so forth. And maybe you're not more home. There's so much.
Yes.
I think that's going on in parents' minds,
right.
that can result in some of the issues. Because, as you said before, stress can cause some of these physical, biological conditions.
Right, and as NCDs are so prevalent, the second one would be...
NCDs are what again?
The non-communicable diseases. Diabetes now is just as popular almost as hypertension. And the diabetes affects every organ of the body. So
And so diabetes can come also as a result of stress?
Yeah, prolonged stress can actually predispose to developing diabetes based on the whole hypercortisol situation.
All right, so let me take a quick, we're going to take a break, and then outside of the break, on the back, and Dr. Arthur Green, medical doctor, in the house with me as we look at issues relating to our health, back to school medical, we're calling it, community medical considerations for back to school scope and impact. In this segment of the program, we're talking about this period of anxiety, this back to school, which is a period of anxiety for the community. So we're talking about the student, the parents, the teachers,
yes,
generally all that industry around this, the back to school. And we were looking, as we went into the cash pot draws, Arthur, we were looking at how the economic anxiety, we talk about the social anxiety for students and so on, and the economic anxiety that parents experience and how that feedback on children, but also as a result of the stress that parents undergo, some of the physical conditions that can develop as a result of the stress, including high blood pressure. And we left off where you were telling us about diabetes and how this can be developed as a result.
Right. So this is one of the common and non-communicable disease. It's widespread and it's also widely undiagnosed as well. Usually, however, when persons are challenged with them, they will have some signs that may alert them. So some persons may have frequent urination, itching all over the body, yeast infection for women, discharge, urinary tract infections, and for some people they have sudden weight loss and lack of energy. So those type of things may cause some people to go and do a checkup, and they may discover the condition. But of course, persistent stress can, trigger these type of responses, those flight-fright reaction that will result in a lot of hormones being released, cortisols, and these can predispose a person now into a diabetic situation. Because normally one of the coping mechanisms of stress also is irrational eating, and of course, typically the pacification comes with high sugar content foods or drinks. And those can be the tipping point in just, unmasking borderline diabetes.
I see how it becomes a vicious cycle, because you're already stressed, you're already going through what you're going through because of the economic situation that you're facing, and then you have health conditions developing. Later on in the program, we're going to be talking about how you plan, and what are some of the things we can do.
Right.
But these are some serious issues.
They are serious, and we must also take into account that teachers are also parents, so they have a double whammy. Because when you're going to face a new school year, the preparation and the charting and so on is, performance anxiety. Some students facing exams will have that same issue of performance anxiety. So can I cope? Can I manage this? Can I manage the workload? And so for the teachers going in, they are there to teach, and they are doing their work. They are also parents, so they also experience the anxiety of their own child and the different attending needs. And so some of these augmented stresses could explain what you read about earlier, where some of these are gone unnoticed, or they're trying to cope without complaining, and then all of a sudden it was too much strain to bear, and then the system give out. Usually it's a cardiac response.
And an acute situation that we see teachers facing in recent times is a violent classrooms. When a teacher gets ready to go to school, on top of everything else, they are preparing to go to war. They're walking into a battlefield where they can get hurt, they are disrespected, on top of everything else. But just this acute situation
Yes.
where now they're walking into that.
Right.
What does that do? I mean, I know you're not a psychiatrist, but on top of everything else,
right,
you're thinking about this as you walk into the classroom or get ready to go into the classroom.
Right. So, as we say, the teacher is a parent, a human being. Mm-hmm. They are facing the same issues, financial stresses, etc. Now, having their own children, that they're going through the parent stress, mm-hmm. so the professional stress, the parental stress, the financial stress, and then the stressful condition at the workplace. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of successive stress on a daily basis. It's bound to have take its toll. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, to retract from that, we'd have to now ask why is the environment and the students violent in their behavior, and that would carry us right back to communities from whence they came, because violence is a normal order of the day for conflict resolution in their communities, and so they are acting normally as per their community. And so you could see the connectivity between these things. So now the school becomes a microcosm of the wider society, which would be a kind of a mosaic, because not all students would come from a similar background or environment.
So this is a space now where gang warfares are being played out,
right,
where political tribalism played out,
yes,
where,
by proxy,
entertainment divisions are being played out, who's siding with that and who's siding with that person.
Right.
And so we see all these different types of violence, but the reality is,
right,
is frightening
right,
for other students,
yes,
for teachers, for parents, and the community generally. So we've got, and I know we're going to deal with solutions, and we're saying this as we're saying it, but I can't help but think that we're not even exaggerating. I mean, this is the reality.
No, and to something that you have brought up before is the impacts on the students now of also the digital platforms and the bullying and etc. So when you take this into account, this is a new factor that sometimes plays out in real life, when they are in face-to-face.
I am very concerned about this social media bullying that plays out right in physically, because it's all playing out physically, which we're not aware of in the way that we need to be. But whether it plays out physically or not, there's so many students who are who enter depressive phases and prolonged depression. I think young people, because of social media bullying, and that we are not even aware of. Parents are not necessarily aware of it. Teachers are not necessarily aware of it. But you see this behavior in the student. How do you respond to that? It seems to me as if we need a whole new response, but a whole new a paradigm shift in how we deal with the spaces of education on the island, from kindergarten to high school. I know we need to go university, but I'd focus on that block for now, in terms of how we deal with social media and social media bullying. I think we are seriously behind time. There's a lot of catching up to do.
Right,
this,
definitely. And you mentioned a very important point there, that exposure to this type of anxiety, and that is persistent, and they're not able to resolve it, will oftentimes result in depression. So it's in the opposite, seem like the opposite scale, but they often travel side by side, straddle each other. And so in the depressive phase, also, they will be more probably reclusive. There will be change in behavior, not uninterested in their schoolwork or decreased performance. And if that phase goes unnoticed, sometimes along with what you're saying, augmented by bullying and other issues such as those, other social issues, without intervention can lead to self-harm.
Exactly, and this is what we're facing, and this is a global situation right now that I think there's just so much work to be done. I think we need a paradigm shift, and I am not seeing it. Even as we go into the school year, I'm listening to the Minister of Education. I hear what's coming out of the JTA conference, I see what's happening generally, and I'm not necessarily seeing the paradigm shift, but there has to be a serious
paradigm shift, definitely. If we should look as another stakeholder in this whole back-to-school condition that is also prone to be victims of anxiety, we look at those who are in commuting, so the bus drivers, the taxi drivers, etc.
This is critical. Hold it. Let me take a quick...
That would arise from those things.
You know what I'm thinking as I talk to you is that somebody who is not living in Jamaica, people who are living or listening overseas who do not have the Jamaican experience, might be saying to themselves, but why are you pointing out all of these things? The thing about it that we need to make clear is that we're talking about the norm. This is not the exception. We're talking about the norm. What happens, everything you hear us talk about this morning is a norm. This is what happens for our parents, our students, our teachers, our commuters, regardless of who you are in terms of commuting on the road. We are talking about the norm as we look forward to another school year where we are expecting the best out of all of us.
Yes.
Coming through all of this. It's an interesting thing. So we're going to talk a little bit now about, in this segment of the program, about how, are we through it? Do you have anything else to say before we move?
These things, they're very critical. For example, transport and commuting. The long and short is we expect that for a successful outcome, it requires the safety and the security of the all involved, but in particular the students, since we focus on them for the most part. But at the same time, other issues around them would affect their safety, their health, and their performance. Not least of which is arriving at school safely, because sometimes there's racing on the road with the minibuses, the taxis, and all like these. They're also hustling to make ends meet. And so we have a very, dangerous mosaic of activity. And
the way people are transported, where we have still, the kind of it's almost like a slavery situation where people are packed into taxis, packed into buses.
Yes.
Because everybody's trying to get to where they're going, and there are repercussions if you go late, whether it is to your work or to school. There are parents who are dropping off students and then still have to go to school because you don't have nobody else to drop off a student to school and so on. And then there are children, young children, who are too young to be making the journeys up by themselves.
Right.
That's another situation. So the society, we need a gentler, kinder society. And that's going to take us to community and the paradigm shift that we're talking about. But this commitment to another way of doing things. And you are underscoring that there is another way to do this, Dr. Green, which is where we want to go to. What are we voting for? What are we asking our leaders to do? They are entrusted through our votes and our taxes and so on to carry out a duty as servants to us, really. And so the paradigm shift we're talking about also has to come from us in terms of what we expect and what we demand from those parliamentarians, those we put in elect to take charge and to lead the process of development then. I think even when we think about education, the way education is being delivered in Jamaica, the whole system has been failing for so long that, I remember having a discussion with Amina a few weeks ago and asking if it's a deliberateness. There's a deliberateness about it. Why is it allowed? Why is it being allowed to continue in this vulgar manner for so long? But you're seeing a way that we can address this, and you're saying, well, let us return to ourselves, Sankofa, and look at what we have.
Right.
And so you're looking at Ubuntu.
Right. That Ubuntu principle definitely is part of the solution. And as you said, society, we have to understand the concept of society as community. We have to make them synonymous in this case. And the major components and the players that you mentioned about the state itself, you know, and the role that they have to play. Well, the truth is this: if we should observe, Jamaica is unique in some senses, in terms of the fact that this is a society that, you know, took from the US their motto of "E pluribus unum," out of many one. This is not our reality here. And
that we need to say that's not our motto. That was taken from the United States.
Right.
That's not ours.
And so, what is the reality on the ground in Jamaica? We have to look, because community evolves out of a cultural context. Now, for the most part, Jamaica is a mosaic with 95% Africans here. We have the Chinese and the Indians and Jews and etc. And for the most part, we have seen that whether the Chinese came here recently or as immigrants, as you know, incentive workers, they maintain their cultural connection. And so that gives them a sense of community that facilitates them in their behavior as a group. The same thing applies to the Indians. So the cultural background and framework is missing from the masses of us. So what goes and passes for culture depends on where you are. So the culture in St. Elizabeth will be different from that in Kingston, different from that in St. Mary, in St. Anne, in Trelawney. So everybody, there is no understanding.
There's subcultures.
And there is an absence of a genuine culture, because that cultural framework is necessary, that there is a point of connection, of convergence. And that now will set the stage to have some discipline and control over communities in general. Well, that is absent, and this is where the Ministry of Education particularly has a pivotal role to play.
Yes.
Because the textbooks does not reflect the African culture in any form when the masses of the people are Africans.
Right. And there's also a deliberateness in that.
Yes.
Because we're talking about 1962 to now, where we just celebrated independence, so-called independence. But look at the system of education. Look at the curriculum, which we're still fighting with to be more inclusive of us, of we, the masses of the people.
Definitely, that has to be one of the critical part of the reformation that is necessary to bring about changes and the evolution of community and the community impact on the wider society. And for the simple reason that without a pivotal or a compass, a guideline in which to follow, we were not going to have a sense of self, a sense of value, a sense of worth, a sense of importance. So the textbooks will specifically talk about the Tainos, they'll talk about the Indians and the Chinese, and then they come and they mention Jamaicans. So there's a disconnect, or a deliberate disconnect in the curriculum, so that the person out here, if you actually say we are Africans, many persons are actually offended because they say, no, we are Jamaicans.
Yes. Yes.
So they are taking on just a nationality and not realizing.
And they will look for the 1% or 0.001% of Chinese and foreground that.
Right.
If that is there. And this is I think part of the greater and the wider problem that we have, which is a disconnect from ourselves, so that we have not defined the Jamaican, and we cannot define the Jamaican without defining the African. It's impossible to define the Jamaican without defining the African, and this is
true.
The curriculum.
That is true, because at the end of the day, the Chinese is also Jamaican, as is the Indian.
Yes.
But beyond the nationality, the ethnicity is important, because cultures evolve and have their differences based upon the race. So if we are detached from ourselves, we will never be whole. And when you are fractionized, then you are more prone to anxiety, to violence, and to a lack of commitment to anything.
So there is a pride that we hear when Jamaicans who are Chinese Jamaicans identify their Chinese heritage.
Right.
There is a pride that we hear from Indians or
Yes.
Indian Jamaicans identify their Indian heritage.
Correct.
There is an active agenda to take from or to devalue the African Jamaican so
Yes.
that he or she feels no pride in identifying as such. But what is the importance of understanding that African identity, of identifying that African identity in the wider context of the issues we're discussing here? How do we fix some of the problems that we currently face in the classrooms, on the way to school, in the homes and in the community?
Right. So any cursory visitation or revisiting of African cosmology will show us how the community operates. So first of all, there is a respect for elders. The elders have lived for several generations and they are venerated and they have their wisdom which is passed on from one group to the next. Mm-hmm. First of all, there is naming. So when a child is born, the wise elders will look at the child, and when they look and peer into his future, they will name him appropriately so that his name becomes his purpose.
So there are rites of passage. This idea of the rites of passage, where the community is responsible for that process as a child goes through the different phases of development.
Right. Mm-hmm. So from that very moment, the word, sound, and power in your name reminds you on a daily basis of your purpose. Yeah. And so because persons are purposefully planted, then the community evolves around it, because you have those who are for guardians, those who are nurturing, those who are hunting, those who are building, and so on. So that is how we have the evolution of a community. So just to be grown up ad hoc here and there with no connection, no connectivity to nothing, no knowledge of self, and the whole principle of Ubuntu and Kemetic cosmology is that all things and everybody are connected and related at some point. And that knowledge allows you now to know how to interact. So to harm the individual and so around you would be the last thing on your agenda. That would not come.
Is also to harm yourself. And the thing about it is that it works now, because we see how this work in certain societies. In North Africa, for example, where elders are revered, and we're talking about a whole different culture, right? But I'm still identifying that, just in case people are saying, but this doesn't work. There's interconnectedness. I mean, we were in Egypt the other day, and we are still. I had to say something to you in the taxi one time, because we were in the taxi in the middle of a crowd. We would come to a stoplight where in Egypt each road have how much highway, how much lane?
5, 6, 7
in one direction.
In one direction.
And 5, 6, 7 the same direction. That's one road.
Yes.
And so we're at this massive intersection where the stoplight not working, and it is what you call it something another neck. What you call it again? Bottleneck. When everything jam up right there, so.
Yes.
And nobody was arguing with anybody. People were just taking their time.
Very calm.
And the sun was hot, it was like 40 degrees, with the tires literally melting off the cars. and people were just going through, and some even have time to stop and wave. Right. And we, with our Jamaican selves, because that is what we were in terms of the culture that we did carry this. Well, you, not me. Was saying, but where is he going? But you go there. And then and the driver is just laughing.
Right.
Because he's not in that frame of mind at all. And nobody's in that frame of mind. And it's not a one-off.
Yes.
It is because what we noticed going back and forth over time is that these people see the interconnectedness between themselves and the person in the next car.
Right.
And understand that they are brothers and sisters. Yes. And so that there is no animosity. at that level. It's phenomenal. You have to experience that to see that. Right. We are coming from that very same space. I remember that kind of a community. I grew up in such a community.
Right.
So it is not...
There is a breakdown. So after 62 years, we have seen very little progress in that. And I think after repeated calls, something has to be definitely done. It has to be considered that the solution has to come from an inclusivity, an inclusion in the curriculum of the African-centered culture,
yes,
including rituals, language, and so on, and to embrace these so that it will give individuals a sense of belonging, a sense of pride. So in other words, you would have little bad mind concept. So if somebody achieves something, like if we have an achievement from Bolt or Shellyan, these act as inspiration for us.
Yes.
So we are inspired. So it's nothing to bad mind the person's achievements. You use it as something inspirational to...
Your achievement is my achievement because
yes.
your achievement is going to benefit the community.
Right.
And so whether you go and come, when you come, you belong to the community.
Right.
And it's not just you, so other people begrudge you and tear you down. So if you post a video with your Benz, a man come tear down your house, as we see happening in Geisel. And this idea that people grudge you for what you have. But a lot of this mentality of people grudge you for what you have and people bad man and so on, that's coming even from the very top, because we hear that from the mouth of the Prime Minister. So this paradigm shift that we're talking about is a holistic paradigm shift. That it's a nation that has to be guided through this process of the paradigm shift. Somebody who can articulate that as a vision of who we can be, our best selves.
Right. So we have to now enter a paradigm where persons are valued, not necessarily based on their academic or scholastic achievements or their financial prowess, but they must be held accountable for their moral consciousness and obligation and mindfulness of community and those around us. So
that if somebody robs up the Ministry of Education, for example, or whether the case is in court and the person is being investigated, the Minister of Education shaking that person's hand at a conference is sending the wrong message to young people, is sending the wrong message to the same young minds that we're talking about. How that go? Is that okay then? You know, there is just so much. So once again, we go back to the paradigm and where the shift has to come from and where it has to take place. It has to be a simultaneous, across the board, holistic thing that we agree on,
right,
as a nation.
Yes, definitely. If we look at the role of, because we are saying back to school, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, that has to be seen in close conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yes.
Because these two things are critically things, and so that we take more control over food security, so that, no child or family anywhere, having such a small population, less than 3 million, should go to bed hungry for no reason at all. And, certain things, we don't know the principles of them, but the private sectors, it is a known fact that, for example, many hotels dump tons of food on a daily basis. Why aren't these channeled to the institutions where persons could benefit from them, for example?
So then you're pointing us to it's a long-term solution, short-term solutions in terms of the food and so on.
Yes.
And agriculture with the Ministry of Health and also the Ministry of Education. And then long-term to look at principles, African principles, and we know that we have the Ubuntu pedagogy, which is well articulated. We had one of our sisters who has done her PhD in this, written a book about it. She was on with me a few weeks, if you remember, talking about how that is a different way of teaching to the Western way that we know, and then how that could impact the behavior of students in the classroom and on the school compound, even when we're talking about violence against each other, student and student violence.
Right. Definitely. So what we know now is we have preventative measures as prophylaxis, as you would say, that can be taken.
Yes.
And in different aspects. So just for example, as how safe vaccines, for example, are given to children to protect them from certain communicable diseases. We know that the importance of proper sanitation and hydration, very important. In these times are especially hot, and coming not just from the heat, but we're talking we are in a cycle now of more frequent solar flares and, coronal mass ejection.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we notice a lot of persons now suffering from dehydration.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're in the older age group or the younger age group, 5-year-old and less, these are more critical to life, because the sudden dehydration can result in cardiopulmonary distress.
So you're talking about the extent to which children are rehydrated at school now. Now we're looking at straight health and how you survive through the day.
Through the day, yes. So sanitation, hydration, and nutrition. Right. Those are, access to these are vital.
I know nutrition is really a sticking point because of what is available on school compounds, because of what parents can afford, so in terms of whether or not you're able to take your lunch to school. But then again, when you get to school, what is available, what you have access to. Because if fruits are available, I guarantee you children will buy fruits, regardless of what they say. But if it's going to be all, fizzy drinks and sweet stuff and artificial cheesy stuff, which they get addicted to,
right,
they're going to continue to buy this. But at least an option, I think is critical. These discussions have been going on forever in terms of the need for proper nutrition for school. It takes me back to the article that was published in the paper on World Physical Activity Day that says, in an age dominated by screens and sedentary lifestyles, the call for physical activity has never been more urgent, especially for our school-age children. The mental, physical, and cognitive benefits of physical activity have been unequivocally proven. Yet there remains a glaring deficit in physical activity opportunities within schools, particularly in the regions like the Caribbean, including Jamaica, where the burden of NCD's non-communicable diseases looms large over public health systems. And it goes on to talk about the national policy that is needed, the proposed Jamaica school nutrition policy that could help to facilitate more physical activity opportunities for generations to come. An interesting article that was published on World Physical Activity Day. It's also a very long one, so persons can go out and read it. But it goes right to what you're saying. Yes.
Right. It's very relative.
Yeah.
Because this is not only boosting their immune system,
right,
but also, helping their cognitive skills, better performance.
Yeah, because it says the fourth high-level meeting on NCDs will be held in 2025, where heads of governments will assess the progress of 9 voluntary global targets for the prevention and control of NCDs, including physical activities. And then it goes on to talk about what priority should be given to building awareness, to active environments, continuous monitoring and evaluation, and so on. And for adults, including teachers, parents, and community leaders, to serve as positive role models by prioritizing their own physical activity and demonstrating its importance through their actions. It goes on to say that the time to act is now. It's a pretty interesting article.
Right. So that is very interesting and very relevant. So we hope that there will be positive compliance with those principles. And in our own settings, when we finger a lot of the stress related to fiduciary stresses, financial stresses, and the increased high cost of living. Right, these are important issues that I guess we have to get more persons, able to sustain themselves. Employment opportunities, very important, and proper remuneration, very important, because these will now impact how people are able to clear their bills and debts and also sustain themselves and their families.
Coming out of the JTA conference, I think the newly installed president of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Dr. Mark Smith, told Education Minister Favour Williams on August 19 that teachers, if compensated, would not opt to migrate in droves in search of greener pastures. He was speaking at the presidential address during the he was delivering the presidential address during the investiture ceremony at the 60th annual JTA conference. And he says, how in 2024 is this low wage for teachers still a struggle in Jamaica? Minister, most of our teachers will stay if they are better paid. Our schools are struggling to keep pace with the migration of high school teachers. Also in primary schools, we are losing science, technology, and mathematics teachers. Our present reality is a precarious one at best. Despite possessing the local capacity within our teacher training institutions, we are seeing dwindling numbers. The profession is just not attractive. He says we have to change that dynamic, which is a point you're making.
Oh, that is most urgent. That is most urgent.
Yeah. Also, I want to point to... we were talking about violence in school coming out of the conference. Also, the Jamaica Teachers Association president also called for a new approach to solving the challenge of violence in schools. He was speaking to reporters at the conference. He noted that the issue cannot be approached in silos, as it's a reflection of challenges in the wider society. I think this is a very point that you're underscoring this morning.
Right. This is where the community comes into play and its socio-economical impact on the members of the community, of that community, including children.
He said there must be a broader national campaign focused on reculturing Jamaicans. And this, I see this is a point you were making, and even when we talk about how important culture is. While acknowledging that a comprehensive solution will take time, Dr. Smith said schools must focus on teaching children emotional intelligence. Yes. He explained that behaviors exhibited by children at school often reflect breakdowns in the home. This is why the home is important. This is why the community is important.
Is important, right. Because in cases where there are, in the African setting, deficiencies in individual homes, that is compensated for by the community inclusivity that takes up the slack. So, there's no child without shelter or food at any time.
Yes, community. We can't underscore community enough. If there's anything you want to take away, let's spend some time talking, because we started here and we want to wrap up this segment here, which is to talk a little bit more about the importance of community. Right. And how even because apparently we said just now, the multidimensional, multifaceted way that this is to be done, and how you had mentioned earlier to this holistic way that this is to be addressed. But community every time is at the center of that.
It has to be at the center because the country is small and divided into, let us say, a number of parishes and so on. But in some larger zones, bigger, Africa is vast and other continents are vast. And so communities naturally evolve and you don't have that mass migration from area to area. So people grow up in a stable setting and they have a set of behavioral patterns that guide them until they now interact with other persons. Mm-hmm. Now, where there is an absence of a definite cultural cohesiveness or pattern, there are no guidelines, and so people migrate here and there and they become influenced and adopt anything. So what we have in the place of a community is really chaos. So it's a matter of... Where do we
go from here? Community or chaos? Chaos or community?
It is chaos. So the action you describe on the road, the rat race, the yelling of bad words at each other and the aggressiveness, all of these or normal, what you'd call uncoordinated behavior that would result from in a society that has no principles to tell you to be calm, to take a deep breath, to use a different approach.
Yeah.
Yes, so something is missing.
Leaderfulness. Because if you watch on a Sunday morning on the television stations or listen or going to any church, even the pastor, even those who are preaching, they're angry. Them literally bawl out them throat rollers and what I say. They're talking so loudly and they're shouting at you, and there's so much judgment in that space. And if you check Parliament, them cussing each other and throwing things at each other, and it's a whole rabble-rousing space. And then if you check, the classroom, is the same thing as we talk about the violence. If you check in the home, if you check in so wherever we are, we have become so angry. Yes. That somebody has to say, let us stop and take a deep breath.
Right.
And this is what I think, even within the classroom, that the Ubuntu pedagogy does, because it allows for the students, when they come in, to have that space for meditation, but also that space for community, which is school community. And this is critical to how the Ubuntu pedagogy has developed and evolved over time. It is not difficult for the Ministry of Education to tap into that, because there is so much research and publications and active implementation of the Ubuntu pedagogy across the African diaspora and Africa. Right. It's really not difficult to tap into. If everything else failed, if all has failed already,
yes,
then let us try something we have never tried before then. Let us try ourselves.
I agree. And as I say, the school is really a microcosm of the wider society. And to some degree, the schools try their best to instill some form of discipline and self-respect in the students. However, at the end of the day, when they resort to their own communities, there is no reinforcement. Right. And because of that, it's the effect is null and void, literally.
And so we have had these conversations so often, Dr. Green, that it boggles the mind. We have been saying it for years in this space. So many persons who have come in this space, we hear it coming from every single JTA president. Here's a new one making the same speech. So the same speech is being made over and over again. What it tells me is that we know what to do. The problem now, or the challenge now, is to do it.
Right. I think also the whole concept of what we would call assessment. The assessment, and how we view what are the parameters for success. As you say, individual success is all well and good, but it should not exist in isolation, because that is where the principle of communities is so important. So, for example, just on a scale of simple common sense, conscience, or morality, for lack of a better word, the banking system and the private sector that continue year after year to rake in 100 and 200, 300% profits margins should just logically think that, let us provide scholarships for students. The population of Jamaica is so small that with the slightest help, we could actually eradicate poverty, unemployment in all of these sectors, such as
I think they will tell you that they provide scholarship for students. You're saying that it should be more students. You're saying, or
yes. In other words, they would pick up the slack where it cannot, because if we look, our history is continuous since independence and before independence. You're trying to play catch up, and it's almost impossible, because in the beginning you were not given, since emancipation, you were not given any land, so you had no asset even for subsistence. You were unemployed for the most part, and the investment for the most part is in jails and so on. So they expect to keep your numbers down and keep you in this subjugation. So there has to be a mindset from the highest level that why isn't Jamaica another Singapore where there is no unemployment, zero? It's not impossible, but they are trying to use certain cliches like, the poor will always be with us, and that type of mindset is negative.
Yeah. And the neoliberal agenda is ensuring that it doesn't function. Capitalism, as we've heard so many times in this space, cannot survive without the poor will always be with us. And if you're going to maintain this capitalist system, this neoliberal agenda, then you're going to do everything in your power. So as long as we realize that, let us then start from our families, our communities, to begin to make the change while we hold those responsible, those who are in charge of the systems that guarantee education and health and social welfare and so on, that we hold them responsible. And I think we can only do this through people power. At some point, we are going to have to, as a people, demand more from the system.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
This is what we're gonna wrap. I'm gonna give you the final word.
What can be done realistically? We know things take time and effort, but really and truly, in our country, the reality of Jamaica is what can be done by the arbiters of governance. With all the massive acres of crown land, each family can be given a plot of land so that at least you can eke out a subsistence. You won't have to be calling people squatters. And if you're given a plot of land, you have access to health and education, then you have a framework in which you will be more communal, your contribution will be significant and relative, self-sustenance, national sustenance, and in this type of general Ubuntu principle, then the society and our nation as a whole can progress.
The interconnectedness of all of us. Thank you so much, Dr. Arthur Green. This is where we're wrapping it for this morning. And this discussion, we have just about half an hour to go inside of the program, but we're wrapping the discussion right now. Thank you so much, Arthur, for coming in.
Thank you.
Dr. Arthur Green there, medical doctor, and he's somebody who's done these medicals that we're talking about and has been doing this for many. How long now you been in the medical profession, Arthur?
Yeah, it was 3 decades.
3 decades, see that? So working with the public, so you work with the Ministry of Health for years, and you're out of that system now, but you're within your private practice. How we can reach you?
357-9692.
All right, so 876-357-9692. You can
or
get to
282-1414.
282-1414. All right, Dr. Arthur Green, thank you so much. It was good working out with family this morning for this part of the program. We have just right to vote because we've got an election coming up. How are we going to use our precious rights to vote? Are we going to vote on the issues? Are we going to vote like tribalists? Are we going to forget who we are and who died for us and who marched for us and who bled for us for this precious right to vote and vote like we're tribalists? Is that what we're about to do? Facebook LMDS Ras Andy Anderson says Hotep. Donna Martis says we are educated, socialized to mythologize every other race. There are these mythical people with astounding qualities, but we devalue and racialize our own, ironically embracing the very stereotypes created by the very races we idolize. Still, we fail to see the power in African unity and how continued failure is the greatest weapon in the hands of the enemy. My sister, she says, ironically, it's the Ministry of Health and Wellness who has to approve the license for the Ministry of Agriculture to import Roundup. Here we are because we're not done around here. Thank you so much, my sister, for putting that in perspective. When we're voting, we ask of the person who is standing up to say, will you ensure that we stop importing Roundup? Get the answer and hold them to it. A little reclaim our tongue, one word at a time. We're not going to force it, We're not going like, we're going to just sit down and learn the Bantu languages, We really, I know I speak a lot of Swahili in this space, but Swahili and Kiswahili are not my thing, right? I'm like Jimmy Cliff. I understand the politics of it, right? So we're going for the real Bantu languages. And let us find a word, one word per month, if I saw it go. One word per month if we can learn. And let that word become our part of our everyday use, our everyday language. Because the thing about it, we already have some, for example, we have Uno. Uno is a Bantu word, is a Shona word. It means I am because you are. It means we are connected. I am human because you are human. I am a person because you're a person, and all of that. And then we also have another one. We have Butu. And we have to reclaim Butu. We have to put Butu out there, rinse off Butu, and bring back Butu to understand that Butu means the same thing as Uno. It means I am because you are. We are interconnected. You are my sister. You are my brother. I am because you exist. It's the same thing Butu mean. We have that, and then we've been talking about Ubuntu. Then see our sister Aldis give us 3 good one here now for just fling in. And so we going fling in them one here too. So my sister Arlene says Shiboka. Yes, my sister Arlene. Let me go back for Aldis. So make we just find the words them. Another thing too we can find is our words for God, what our tongues used to call God. And we can start today with a Bantu word, Zulu Bantu word, Nkulunkulu. That's one of the words that we call God. Nkulunkulu. We can start that today. We can start with it today. So we know, so we're still tempted to say God, But if we begin to introduce the words into our everyday vocabulary, then we can start it. Nkulunkulu. That is God. You see, or the tongue just roll up and just go on, so say, we got them powerful. If we ever, you see, sometimes people say the blood, and if we don't need to say enough, we just say unkolo. In the name of unkolo, everything is good. That's what we call talking in tongues. Me just love the name they forgot, Master. Unkolo. Because where I have to put my tongue to get that word out, it comes with everything in my being, right? Because me have to twist up my tongue and push it back down my throat and say nkolo, and then pull it back out. Well, just try and say it if you think I'm lying. Try and say nkolo and see where your tongue go and see how it curl up and see how it behave in your mouth. That's what tongue is supposed to be doing when you're talking about Mother, Father, God. Register to vote? You have a voter's ID?
No, not yet.
That will make you part of a 63%. ID together. I see him. Come here.
When you get it, you'll just get mine.
Get you? So when we're getting mine, just get his. You see the situation now, so you know what that means, though. All right. I think because in the parish council elections, we saw what happened across Jamaica, and even to this day, people are still asking who won the elections, and it shows you that even when it's just a handful of us voting, that we can make a difference and we can make a change, and we can create a situation where people begin to look at the issues that are important to the electorate. And I think we can do that in the next general election. Right, Mr. Begay?
Yes. And it is also my belief, though, that nobody is really paying attention to what the masses of the people are actually saying. It is about who is the most popular of the choices, while the majority of the persons are saying we are not happy with the two choices.
Right, and that is why I am saying, what are the issues then? Because we vote, Jamaican people for a good while now have been voting tribal, voting for the Prime Minister, because Jamaicans do that, Manley, Siaga, PJ, Portia, Andrew. So I think it's shifting that paradigm.
I wonder why you're drawing me to this political web.
Well, because them know me and you. But you see,
we're afraid.
Because we're independent. Everybody knows that we're independent and everything. So the bottom line is that if we can shift that paradigm there, and we can begin to talk to our families, talk to our communities, talk to our friends, and say, listen, but what are the things that are important to you?
Yeah, but I believe that the small amount of persons who have voted, they have indicated to their respective parties, based on the promises that have been made, right, that we don't see them delivering on their promise over the years. So it don't even really matter about what the issues are, because if we vote on the issues, these issues still are not going to be fixed.
But
who is paying attention?
That is the question.
To the majority of persons who, by their absence, are voting, who are saying that, hey,
that's the point.
I don't see anything that the two are offer. So I am reserving my vote for any of you.
And you vote with your foot.
Right?
By walking away from the polls as opposed to walking toward the polls.
Right.
And so the point I'm making is that, so we've done that for a while now, and we're still not seeing no change, right?
We have voted, we're still not seeing no change.
Right. So what if we begin now to demand, because we're not demanding anything?
I think we have, probably demand is a strong word, but if you promise me something and I vote for you, then I expect you to deliver. We shouldn't be demanding it. No, it should be that you deliver.
I tell you what we're going to demand. We're going to demand that in the constitutional reform, you have to ensure that there is right to impeachment, right to recall if an MP is not performing, because I want to see when I go vote for it. Be looking at the Constitution, because we talk about constitutional reform.
We have to go take out a chunk of the philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey.
Yes. I remember Sir Garvey of stone them in the tar them and feather them and stone them. But we are saying we have the right to recall the MP if you are not delivering on your promise. If you're not doing what you're saying you're going to do, then you said you're going to do, then we have the right to say we don't want you anymore and we recall you.
Right. So this is now what you're proposing in the new
yes, dispensation.
Right. The new referendum. The Republic of Jamaica.
Yes. And this is why I'm saying that the vote is important, because we're not just going to vote blindly.
Is the vote
but
important
to vote
now, or is it when the island becomes a republic?
Right, so that is a question to be answered, but I think it is also important now.
Because up until now,
before so we vote for the UIC, before so everybody go vote for the UIC and show them and show them something on the PPP. There are a lot of other parties out there, and if we, the 63%, go out in our numbers and say, listen, so you both have been saying all you've been saying for so long without any change. So now we're going to do something different. And then we, the people, become part of the change.
That's certainly workable.
It's workable.
It's certainly workable.
So I'm going to leave with that then, because it says it's workable, I'm going to work. But Me gonna work, Panny.
It is workable.
Because I'm not going to register. So me go register.
Since you're down that road, remember the conversation we had a few weeks ago when you welcomed a particular president of a particular country. And I said to you, depending on who is going to defeat.
Yes, true.
And it is possible now that he's not going to defeat.
Mike, listen, I thought...
You need to walk this back, you know.
I'm walking back. I take back everything.
You better walk it back, you know.
I take back everything.
You better walk it back, you know.
In the moment, I must say, I have apologized like DL Hughley, who apologized on the stage. I apologize. I'm walking back everything. I don't have no hustle this race. I don't know what is going to happen. I'm just out here watching. Making sure that they don't crucify Jesus again. I'm good. So how you see it now?
Well, when I did say, depending on who she or who he is going to win, I know that if there was a different apologies. No disrespect at all.
Okay, I wondered. I said, well, I know you know, so me forget. Goodbye. Making way for the big A. It's 7 minutes after 10 o'clock.
Christmas is going to be interesting too.
How come?
The two big events.
Big A, why you don't leave me alone?
Another day.
No, give me 1 minute. No, this is crazy. This is crazy. All right. You should say the 3 big events.
And what is the third one?
What about the one in January?
I'm talking about the January one and the one on the 31st. Which other one are you talking about?
All aboard. Which other one are we talking about? I mean, there are 2 in December.
Which 2?
And 1 in January.
Which 2?
1 from St. Vincent. 1 from one that's been here for a very long time. That was up in St. Anne last time. And 1 that's in January. It's a big A.
I am lost. But anyway, we will dissect. We still have a few months.
Well, we still have to decide whether the bee sting or the bee bite.
Oh, I see where you're at.
Okay. Okay then. So a 3.
Well, you know, when you take the venom out of the bee, what you call it again?
Honey.
No.
We call it honey. We're not calling it anything apart from honey. Right.
Okay.
This is.
Or is it?
I do think though that the 2, I don't think the 1 is going to affect the other. The 2, December and January.
No. I don't believe that either.
But the 2 December, that's a problem.
Okay. I see.
Even if it's honey. Honey being the metaphor. And we know some of our brethren are listening. You say, for me and for your brethren, I know he's listening. Right? Okay.
No, well.
So it is what it is. But because we see the trajectory, so we know that some things were happening, but at the same time, you know, 1 is a staple.
Interesting times ahead.
Yeah.
Give me another week or 2 to dissect what is happening on the ground.
Okay.
And you know, I don't believe everybody has pulled their punches, has revealed all their tricks yet and all their secrets.
Okay.
Let us see.
So you're waiting for what exactly?
For everybody to show them hand.
Everybody? You mean there are others?
No.
Or you mean the players, the active players?
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay, so next week, Mayor, then. I think by next week you're supposed to know. Do you see the ad already for January?
Yes.
Right, okay. But there are no ads for December?
No ads for December yet.
Okay. Well...
The January show, though, was 2 years in the making.
I know,
we already knew that, you know, 2 years ago it was coming back 2 years later.
Yeah. I think they're going to be so different that they're going to be 2 different audiences and they're both going to work.
Yes.
Yeah. I think so. And they're still going to have the international flair, both of them.
Right. It is going to come down to production, but both houses seem to have production
Capabilities.
Yes.
Yeah. And now come down to money.
No, the money part don't see it already.
Okay. All right. So make a club and go. Make it way for the big A. Big A. No, I need. You know what? Make it play a better song to go out for you, big A. Although the song is good that I'm playing here, but let me play this one, especially because I want to segue properly. Oh no, this can work. All right. So this is how we say goodbye for today as we make way for the big A. Inside of the Sunday Sunshine. My name is Kabu.
For one being representing a man for Uptown TV. You understand?